He gave her the world. A mansion by the sea, jewels that sparkled like stars, and a love story everyone envied. But behind the walls of their empire, a storm was brewing. When a billionaire discovers that the woman he gave everything to was sharing his secrets, and his bed, with the one man he trusted most, the fallout will shake more than just a marriage. It will tear apart love, loyalty, and the very foundation of his empire. Stay with me until the end, because this is a story you won't forget. And before we begin, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a story like this one. The city skyline shimmered under the golden glow of dusk, its towers reaching like fingers into the heavens. At the very top of the tallest glass tower, Ethan Cole stood on the balcony of his penthouse, gazing out at the empire he had built from scratch. Billionaire, philanthropist, visionary, those were the names people gave him. But to him, the only title that mattered was husband. Inside, laughter floated through the halls. Amara, his wife, was sitting in their living room, curled up on the white velvet sofa, her deep ebony skin glowing beneath the soft chandelier light. She wore a silk evening dress the color of wine, her smile radiant as she looked up at Ethan when he walked in. "Finally," she teased, setting down her glass of champagne. "For a man who owns half the city, you sure do keep your wife waiting." Ethan chuckled, loosening his tie. "You know the board never stops talking. But none of it matters once I step in here and see you." He leaned down, pressing a kiss against her forehead. To the world, he was untouchable, cold, strategic, always in control. But with Amara, he melted. She was the woman who had seen him before the money, before the empire, back when he was nothing but an ambitious young man with more dreams than dollars. Their love story had been the stuff of fairy tales. Ethan, a struggling entrepreneur, had met Amara in a small downtown cafe. She was a university student then, studying art history, working part-time as a barista. He had ordered a black coffee and ended up finding his soulmate. Now, years later, he gave her everything: private jets, diamond necklaces, vacations in Paris, a sprawling mansion on the coast, and a penthouse in the city. He often told her, "If I own the world, it's only because I want to give it to you." Tonight was one of those perfect evenings. Their staff had prepared a private dinner, candles flickering, violins playing softly in the background. Ethan pulled out Amara's chair, the gentleman he always was. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked as they ate. His voice was softer than the world ever heard it, a side only she saw. Amara's eyes glistened. "Every day. You made all my dreams come true, Ethan. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve all this." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. "You deserve more. Everything I've built, it's not for me, Amara. It's for us." Her lips curved into a smile, but in her eyes lingered a flicker of something Ethan didn't notice then, something restless, something unfulfilled. Later that night, as they danced in their private living room, city lights twinkling through the windows, Ethan believed he was the luckiest man alive. He had power, wealth, and respect, but most importantly, he had her. What he didn't know was that love, no matter how grand, can be fragile. And even the strongest devotion can be tested in ways one never imagines. The perfect love story was only the beginning. The Coles were the couple everyone envied. Magazines called them America's power pair. Socialites whispered about their elegance at charity galas. Paparazzi never tired of catching them hand in hand, stepping out of black cars dressed in matching designer outfits. Ethan's empire stretched across industries, real estate, technology, and luxury hotels. Every deal he touched seemed to turn into gold. His name carried weight on Wall Street and respect in Washington. If money was power, Ethan had it in endless supply. Amara, however, was not the kind of wife content with sitting idly in luxury. She had carved out her own place in society, not through business, but through compassion. She founded charities that built schools in Africa, organized art exhibits for underprivileged children, and funded scholarships for women of color in business. The world admired her beauty, but they adored her heart. At a gala held in their honor, the two looked like royalty. Amara wore a floor-length emerald gown that shimmered with every step, her curls pinned in a jeweled crown. Ethan, in a tailored black tuxedo, stood proudly by her side, his hand resting at the small of her back. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. "They're untouchable," a guest whispered. "They have it all," another replied. And to anyone watching, it was true. During Ethan's speech that night, he raised his glass toward Amara. "Everything I have achieved, everything I own, means nothing without the woman standing beside me. Amara, you are my anchor, my reason, my greatest fortune." The ballroom erupted in cheers. Amara smiled graciously, her eyes shining as she leaned into his embrace. But behind that flawless smile, her thoughts were elsewhere. She loved Ethan, there was no doubt. But his world was built on constant meetings, endless phone calls, boardroom battles, and late nights at the office. The very empire he had created for them was slowly stealing him away from her. The dinners for two often turned into dinners for one. The late-night talks they used to share were replaced by him answering emails until dawn. Ethan never noticed the loneliness creeping into her heart because he believed giving her everything material meant she could never feel empty. One evening, as Ethan returned home past midnight, he found Amara still awake, sitting by the fireplace. Her eyes were tired, and her smile faint. "You should sleep," he told her gently, kissing the top of her head. "I couldn't," she said softly, staring into the flames. He sat beside her, loosening his tie. "Tomorrow, I'll clear my schedule. We'll fly to the coast house, just you and me." Her heart lifted for a moment, but deep down, she already knew tomorrow would come with another phone call, another urgent meeting. She nodded anyway, because what else could she do? To the outside world, they had the perfect life. But inside their glass tower, cracks were forming, so small they were almost invisible, yet dangerous enough to shatter everything when the right pressure came. And that pressure was closer than either of them realized. The mornings in the Cole penthouse had once been filled with laughter and stolen kisses over breakfast. Now, more often than not, Ethan left before sunrise, his footsteps echoing across the marble floor while Amara remained alone at the dining table, untouched plates cooling in silence. She still tried to keep their love alive. She would plan surprise dinners, decorate their coastal mansion with candles, even book exotic trips for the two of them. But each time, Ethan would smile with that same apologetic expression and say, "Next week, love. I promise. Just one more deal to close." Next week never came. One evening, Amara sat in her dressing room, brushing through her thick curls as the sound of Ethan's muffled voice traveled down the hall. He was on another call, angry, intense, the voice of a man who ruled empires but was slowly forgetting how to nurture a home. Amara's chest tightened. She glanced around at her diamond-studded vanity, the shelves lined with designer gowns, the endless luxury surrounding her. To anyone else, this was paradise. But what good was paradise if you had to walk it alone? At dinner that night, she finally spoke what had been gnawing at her heart. "Ethan," she said, her fork resting untouched. "When was the last time we just talked? Just you and me?" Ethan looked up from his phone, guilt flickering across his eyes. "I know, Amara. I've been buried in work. But you know I'm doing all this for us." Her eyes glistened. "For us, or for you?" The question lingered in the air like a dagger. Ethan opened his mouth, but no answer came. Instead, he set down his phone and reached for her hand. "I love you. Please don't forget that." Amara forced a smile, but inside, doubt began to grow like a shadow. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The loneliness became heavier. She would scroll through social media, seeing couples taking vacations, laughing at dinners, holding hands on late-night walks. And though she lived in a world of luxury, she envied something far simpler: attention. It was during this season of emotional drought that Marcus began to notice. Marcus had been Ethan's right hand for nearly a decade. Together, they had built the coal empire, navigating risky deals and impossible negotiations. To Ethan, Marcus was more than a partner. He was a brother. He trusted him with his business, his secrets, even his home. And Marcus was always there. At dinners when Ethan was late, at events when Ethan couldn't make it, during charity galas when Amara felt like a decorative piece instead of a partner. "Ethan works too much," Marcus would say with a charming grin, offering Amara his arm as they walked into another ballroom. "If I had a wife like you, I'd never leave her side." Amara would laugh it off, but those words stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. One rainy afternoon, as Ethan flew out of the country for another urgent deal, Marcus stopped by the coastal mansion to drop off documents. Amara greeted him, surprised but grateful for the company. They sat by the fireplace, sipping wine, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time in months, she felt seen. She told herself it was harmless. Just conversation. Just companionship. But deep inside, a dangerous line was forming, a line that once crossed, there would be no turning back. And Amara was standing closer to it every day. Marcus Kane was everything a man like Ethan needed at his side: sharp, fearless, ambitious. Where Ethan was methodical and steady, Marcus was bold and charismatic. Their partnership had carried them through impossible negotiations and turned risky ventures into billion-dollar victories. But Marcus also had something Ethan didn't: time. When Ethan was buried in meetings across the globe, Marcus was the one attending charity events, ribbon cuttings, and gala dinners with Amara. At first, it was practical. Marcus filled the void when Ethan couldn't be there. But soon, it felt less like business and more like intimacy. Amara noticed the little things first. The way Marcus listened, really listened, when she spoke about her art, her charities, her dreams. The way he remembered small details Ethan often forgot. How he looked at her, not as the billionaire's wife, but as a woman. One evening, after a long fundraising event, Marcus drove her home. The rain fell in silver sheets across the windshield, the world outside blurred and distant. "You looked beautiful tonight," Marcus said, his voice low, almost hesitant. Amara turned her face toward the window, her heart racing. Compliments from strangers meant nothing. But from Marcus, they felt dangerous. "Thank you," she whispered. When they arrived at the penthouse, Marcus walked her to the door. For a moment, neither moved. The city lights glowed behind them, thunder rumbling in the distance. His eyes lingered on hers longer than they should have, and for a heartbeat, the world stood still. But Amara stepped back. "Good night, Marcus." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Good night, Amara." She closed the door, leaning against it, breath unsteady. It was the first time she admitted to herself that something forbidden was growing between them. The following weeks only deepened the tension. Ethan was away more often than he was home, closing a massive merger that demanded his full attention. Amara, left in the hands of endless staff and security, found herself isolated. Marcus became her escape. He started visiting under the guise of business, dropping off papers, giving updates about Ethan's meetings. But soon their talks stretched longer, drifting away from work into personal confessions, laughter, and quiet moments that felt too intimate for two people who weren't supposed to cross that line. One afternoon, Marcus found her in the garden of their coastal mansion, painting a canvas in silence. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her strokes of color. "You're talented," he said softly. Amara glanced at him, brushing a curl from her face. "It's just a hobby." "No." Marcus stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the painting. "It's a gift. Ethan doesn't see it, does he?" Her brush faltered. "Ethan loves me in his own way." Marcus's eyes softened. "But does he see you?" The question sank into her heart like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through every hidden insecurity. That night, Amara sat in bed beside Ethan, who was once again glued to his laptop. She glanced at him, at the man who had given her everything yet somehow left her starving for the simplest thing: attention. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Marcus. "You deserve more." Her fingers hovered over the screen, torn between loyalty and longing. And in that fragile moment, the walls of trust Ethan had built so carefully began to crack. The storm had been building for weeks, unspoken glances, lingering touches, words that carried meanings neither dared to admit aloud. It finally broke one late evening at the coastal mansion. Ethan was away on yet another business trip, his plane somewhere above the Atlantic, chasing a deal he insisted would secure their future for decades. Amara, alone in the vast house, wandered from room to room, her footsteps echoing in empty silence. When the doorbell rang, her heart skipped. Marcus stood at the entrance, his suit jacket damp from the rain, his eyes carrying a storm of their own. "I shouldn't be here," he said, his voice rough, strained. "Then why are you?" Amara whispered. For a moment, neither moved. The tension between them was heavy, like the charged air before lightning strikes. Finally, Amara stepped aside, and Marcus entered. They sat in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. A bottle of wine sat open between them, glasses half full, conversation drifting from safe topics into the dangerous territory they had both avoided for too long. "Ethan trusts me more than anyone," Marcus admitted, staring into the flames. "And yet every time I'm near you, I feel like I'm betraying him just by breathing the same air." Amara's chest tightened. "Do you think I don't feel the same? He gave me everything, Marcus. But sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in it, surrounded by luxury, but starved of him." Marcus turned to her, his eyes fierce. "If he can't give you what you need, why can't I?" The words hung between them, impossible to ignore. Amara's breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to push him away, to remind herself of her vows. But her heart betrayed her, beating faster as if it had already made the choice. His hand brushed against hers, gentle, hesitant at first, then firmer as she didn't pull away. She closed her eyes, torn between loyalty and longing, morality and desire. "Marcus," she whispered, a warning and a plea all at once. But when his lips touched hers, the warning dissolved. It was a kiss born of months of silence, loneliness, and suppressed emotions. A kiss that should never have happened, but once it did, neither of them could pretend anymore. In the days that followed, their secret became a shadow life. They met in quiet corners of the city, in private hotel rooms where no one knew their names, in the coastal mansion during Ethan's long business trips. Every moment with Marcus felt alive, dangerous, intoxicating. He made her laugh again, listened to her dreams, held her as though she was the only woman in the world. For the first time in years, Amara felt seen, not as a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who craved love, warmth, and touch. But with every stolen kiss, with every whispered confession, guilt carved deeper into her soul. She would return to Ethan, who kissed her forehead and called her "my world," and she would smile as though nothing was wrong. At night, lying beside her husband, she stared at the ceiling, torn in half. Ethan's love was grand, towering, eternal. Marcus's was immediate, burning, forbidden. And deep inside, she knew, one way or another, this fragile game would collapse. Secrets never stay buried forever. Ethan Cole had always trusted his instincts. It was what made him a billionaire, reading people, anticipating moves, seeing what others tried to hide. But in marriage, he had never applied that same razor-sharp instinct. With Amara, he chose trust over scrutiny, until the signs became too obvious to ignore. It began with the little things. Her perfume lingered in the halls long after she said she was meeting with the charity board. Her laughter, once reserved only for him, echoed on late-night phone calls she quickly ended when he entered the room. Her excuses piled up: luncheons, art exhibits, committee meetings. The following weeks, Ethan came home early, the tension, surprising even himself. Was away more often as he entered their penthouse, closing a massive startled expression that demanded his full attention. As though she hadn't expected him until hours later. Left in the hands of endless staff and security, she asked, found herself her voice isolated, just a touch too high. Marcus became her escape earlier than expected. He started visiting calmly, under the guise of business, her face, dropping off papers, wanted to celebrate giving with updates you about Ethan's Amara meetings. Smiled. But her hands fidgeted with the stem of her wine drifting glass. Away from work into it was personal a smile confessions, that didn't reach her eyes, and quiet later that night felt too intimate for two people Ethan who noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. One afternoon, a message flashed Marcus across found the screen her in the garden of their coastal mansion. I miss painting you a canvas already. In silence. No name. He leaned against the doorframe, but Ethan's watching blood strokes of color. The next day, "You're talented," Ethan confided in no softly. One. He didn't shout, glanced at him, didn't accuse, brushing a curl instead, from her face. He watched. He became the man he was in the boardroom. No, silent, observant, closer, gathering his evidence before making a move. He noticed how often Marcus's name came up in conversation. Too often faltered. Marcus had Ethan loves me in his own way. Marcus's eyes softened with the fundraiser. But does he see you? Called the question sank into her heart. Ethan's like a stone dropped into still water, but he said nothing. Through every one evening insecurity. At a private business that night, Amara sat in bed beside Ethan, who was once again laughed a little too easily when Amara's name was mentioned. At the man who had given her everything under Ethan's gaze, left her starving for the first time in years. Ethan saw something in Marcus's eyes he didn't on the nightstand. Guilt. A message. A week later, from Marcus. Ethan returned from a meeting earlier than planned. Her fingers hovered over the screen, to the coastal mansion, torn between he saw another part and longing. Discreetly at the edge of the drive. Fragile moment, a familiar walls black of Mercedes Ethan had built Marcus's so carefully began Ethan's to crack. Jaw clenched. The storm had been building inside, for weeks. The house was quiet. Glances, too quiet. Lingering touches. He walked through the halls that carried meanings. Footsteps neither dared echoing. To admit aloud. From the living room, it finally broke one late carried. Evening at the coastal mansion. Just before the doorway. Ethan was away on yet another business trip. He'll never know. His plane somewhere above the Atlantic, fragile, chasing a deal trembling. He insisted would Ethan's secure their future for decades. He backed away before they could see in the vast house, his chest tight wandered with from fury room to room and devastation. Her footsteps he left echoing silently as he came. But inside when the doorbell rang, something shattered. Her heart skipped. That night, Marcus stood on the balcony of his penthouse, his suit jacket staring out from the rain, glittering skyline, his eyes carrying his a storm of their stretched own. Across the city. I shouldn't stronger be than here. Ever. But said, inside his own home, rough, betrayal had taken root. Then why the man he trusted Amara as a brother whispered. The woman for he a moment had given the world neither moved. Together, the tension between them was heavy. He thought like the charged air before and for the first time strikes. In his life. Ethan finally, didn't know if Amara money, stepped power, aside, or even love could entered. Fix what he had just they discovered. Sat in the living room. Ethan Cole a fire had faced ruthless competitors. Hostile a bottle of wine sat and open $1 billion gambles that could have destroyed him. Conversation drifting from safe topics into the dangerous territory they had both avoided. After weeks of unease, he decided he could no longer live anyone on suspicion alone. Marcus admitted, he staring proof, into the flames, cold, and yet every time I'm near you, he started I feel small. Like I'm betraying him. A call just to his security detail the same confirmed what he already feared. Amara's charity luncheons. Do you think often I ended hours earlier than she claimed? He gave me she would everything. Vanish. With Marcus, no record of where she went. Sometimes I her feel driver, like loyal to her, I'm drowning always in insisted it. She asked to be dropped by luxury at a friend's, but starved of him. Then Ethan did Marcus something he never thought he would do to the woman he loved. He hired someone to follow what you need. The report came 3 days later. The words hung between them, manila folder, impossible slid across to ignore. Ethan's desk in his private office. Caught. She wanted to deny it before opening to push him away, as though to remind herself of her vows. Contained nothing, but her heart betrayed her. But when he finally pulled the photographs out, as if it had already made the choice, there was Amara. His hand brushed against hers, her arm linked with Marcus's, gentle as they walked into a discreet hotel. Then on the far side of the city, pull away. There was Amara. She closed her eyes, laughing at something between loyalty and longing. Her face morality in a way Ethan hadn't seen in years. And then, whispered, the image that cut and a plea all at Marcus's once. Hand on her cheek, but when his lips touched through a hotel room door, the warning dissolved. Ethan dropped the photos. It was a kiss onto the born desk, of months his of silence, trembling, loneliness, 4 hours, and suppressed emotion. Sat in silence. A kiss that should never have happened beneath him. But once he heard nothing. Neither of them his mind replayed every promise Amara in the days had made, that followed. Every sacrifice he had given, a shadow every vow they had spoken. They met in quiet corners of the city. In private hotel rooms where no one knew their names. Breaking. In the coastal mansion wasn't just Ethan's long business trips. It was Marcus's. Every moment with Marcus, the man he trusted as a brother, had not only stabbed him intoxicating. In the back. He had stolen he made the one her laugh thing again. Ethan valued listened above to her dreams, all his riches, held her as that though night, she was the Ethan only woman in the world. Later than usual. For the first time in Amara years, greeted him with her usual warm smile, not as a billionaire's but he wife, saw it differently but now. As a woman who craved love, the mask, warmth, and touch. Quiet. She but said, with every stolen him kiss, a glass of wine, with every whispered he confession, forced a small smile, guilt carved deeper into her soul. As she leaned in to kiss him, Ethan studied her, kissed her forehead, her soft and called her my familiar scent, and she would smile as though nothing was wrong. Place. At but night, now it felt lying foreign, beside her husband, tainted. She stared at the ceiling, notice his torn in half. She didn't see the storm in his eyes, towering, later, eternal. As she slept peacefully beside him, was immediate. Ethan lay awake, burning, staring into the dark. And the photographs burned in his mind. One way or another, twisting deeper this fragile into his chest would collapse. He knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. Buried forever. The evidence was there. Ethan Cole undeniable, had always trusted his instincts. The woman he had what made him a billionaire to a throne beside him, anticipating was sharing her heart, seeing and what her others tried with another man. But in marriage, just any man, he had never applied his that partner, same razor-sharp his instinct. Brother. Ethan turned his head, he chose watching Amara over scrutiny, her face calm, until the signs in the became too obvious to ignore. The fury boiled inside him, the little things, but beneath it was her something worse. Lingered in the halls, a deep, long after she said she was because loving her had been the greatest risk he ever took. Once reserved only for him, it felt like the only gamble he had truly lost. She quickly ended. The boardroom had seen Ethan Cole her at his excuses piled up, sharp eyes, luncheons, calm voice, art exhibits, the kind of man who could dismantle an opponent with words alone. But nothing compared to the storm brewing inside him as he prepared to confront the two people who had betrayed him most. He chose the coastal mansion for it, a place that once symbolized peace, love, and new beginnings. Tonight, it would become the stage for reckoning. Amara arrived first, dressed in a flowing ivory dress, unaware of what awaited. She smiled when she saw Ethan by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You're home early," she said, her voice warm. Ethan didn't answer. He simply gestured toward the sofa. "Sit." Something in his tone froze her smile. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "Sit, Amara." She obeyed, her heart pounding. Moments later, the sound of tires crunching gravel filled the driveway. The front door opened, and Marcus stepped inside. He paused immediately, his confident stride faltering when he saw Ethan and Amara together. Ethan's voice cut through the silence. Perfect. You're both here. Marcus shifted uneasily. Ethan, I... Don't, Ethan snapped, his voice cold as ice. Don't insult me with lies. I know. The room fell heavy with silence. Amara's breath caught, her face draining of color. Marcus clenched his jaw, looking everywhere but at Ethan. Ethan tossed a folder onto the coffee table. Photographs spilled out across the polished wood, each one damning, undeniable. I gave you everything, Ethan said, his voice breaking with restrained fury. The world at your feet, Amara. And you. He turned to Marcus, his eyes blazing. I trusted you with my business, my empire, my family. And this is how you repay me. Ethan, please, Amara whispered, tears brimming. It wasn't supposed to happen. I was lonely. You were never there. Lonely. Ethan roared, slamming his glass onto the table, shattering it. You were lonely in a mansion? Lonely wearing diamonds? Lonely flying in jets while I broke my back building all this for you? Amara flinched, sobbing. I didn't want the money, Ethan. I wanted you. The words pierced the air like knives. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low. Ethan, I never meant to hurt you. But I love her. Ethan's laughter was bitter, hollow. Love her? You mean steal from me? First my trust, then my wife. He stepped forward, his towering presence making Marcus tense. For a moment, it seemed fists might fly, but Ethan stopped inches away, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. You're both dead to me. Amara gasped. Ethan, no, please. I still love you. Ethan turned his gaze to her, his eyes full of pain but no softness left. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't crawl into the arms of another man while your husband is building your world. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she fell to her knees, clutching his hand. Don't do this. Don't throw us away. He pulled his hand free, his face hard as stone. You threw us away the moment you chose him. The silence afterward was deafening. Marcus stood rigid, Amara broken, and Ethan, though shattered inside, remained unyielding. Tonight, the illusion of the perfect love story had burned to ashes. And from those ashes, only one truth remained: nothing would ever be the same again. The night after Ethan's confrontation with Amara and Marcus was long and sleepless. The mansion, usually buzzing with life, sat in a suffocating silence. Ethan stayed in his study, staring at the burning logs in the fireplace. His heart throbbed with a pain money could never mend. Betrayal cut deeper than any business loss, and this wound came from the two people he once trusted most. By morning, the fallout had already begun. Marcus's car was gone, but so was his access to the company's accounts. Ethan had spent the early hours issuing commands, freezing passwords, revoking shares, and cutting off Marcus's influence in the empire he had tried to infiltrate. Lawyers were waiting at Cole Enterprises with binders full of termination papers. Marcus had been erased overnight. But Amara, she was still in the mansion. Ethan found her in the garden, sitting on the stone bench beneath the willow tree where they once shared their vows. She looked small, fragile, her once radiant beauty dimmed by guilt. "Ethan," she whispered when he approached, "please, don't turn me into a stranger." His chest tightened. 4 years, he had loved her more than life itself. She wasn't just his wife, she was his muse, his anchor, his reason for fighting through storms. But every memory was now tainted by the image of her in Marcus's arms. "You already made yourself a stranger, Amara," he replied, his voice hoarse. Her tears spilled freely. "I was wrong. I lost myself. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. You were always gone, always buried in meetings, in numbers, in deals. Marcus was there, listening when you weren't." Ethan's jaw clenched. "So that excuses betrayal?" "No," she sobbed. "Nothing excuses it. I hate myself for what I did. But don't let it erase what we had." She reached for him, her hands trembling. "I still love you." Ethan pulled away, his heart torn between rage and the remnants of love that refused to die. Meanwhile, news had already begun to ripple through the business world. Whispers of Marcus's betrayal spread like wildfire. Investors were rattled, tabloids hungry. Paparazzi camped outside the gates, desperate to capture the downfall of the man who had seemed untouchable. Inside the mansion, Ethan had a decision to make. Would he divorce Amara and end the love story that had once inspired the world? Or would he hold on to her, risking that the scars of betrayal might never heal? For the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the billionaire who always had a plan, felt lost. The fallout was no longer just about his empire. It was about his heart. 3 weeks had passed since the night Ethan's world collapsed. The media had chewed on the scandal until nothing was left but dust. Marcus had vanished into obscurity, blacklisted in every boardroom, lawsuits chasing him from city to city. His once polished name was now a stain no one wanted to touch. But Ethan's true battle wasn't with Marcus. It was with Amara. Every day she tried to reach him. Letters slipped under his study door. Meals left untouched outside his office. Late-night whispers of, "I'm sorry," echoing in the empty halls. She looked thinner, her laughter gone, her beauty shadowed by grief. Yet Ethan couldn't erase the images from his mind. Her betrayal replayed over and over like a cruel film reel. One evening, Ethan called her to the veranda overlooking the ocean. The sunset painted the sky in orange and violet, but the weight in the air was heavy. Amara stepped out cautiously. "Ethan." He didn't look at her at first. Instead, he stared at the horizon, his voice low. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here?" Her lips trembled. "Yes." "You said this place was our forever." "I meant it," Ethan said. Finally he turned, his eyes carrying both love and pain. "But forever ends when trust dies." Tears slipped down her face. "Then let me rebuild it. Let me prove to you that I can earn it back. Don't throw us away for one mistake." One mistake. Ethan's voice cracked with anguish. "Amara, this wasn't forgetting to lock a door or missing a dinner. You gave yourself to the one man I trusted most. You didn't just betray me, you shattered me." She dropped to her knees, clutching his hand, her sobs raw and unrestrained. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if you'll let me. I still love you, Ethan. Please, don't let this be the end." The ocean roared in the background as Ethan looked down at the woman he had built his world around. His heart screamed for her, but his mind reminded him of the knife she had driven into it. Finally, he pulled his hand away. "I'll never stop loving you, Amara," he said softly, a single tear sliding down his cheek. "But love without trust is just pain. And I can't live in pain anymore." Her sob echoed against the crashing waves. Ethan turned and walked back into the mansion, leaving her on the veranda, broken and pleading. Days later, Divorce papers were filed. Ethan moved forward with a cold resolve, pouring himself back into his empire. He wasn't the same man, his laughter gone, his trust forever guarded, but he was determined never to be blindsided again. Amara disappeared from the spotlight, retreating into silence. Rumors swirled, but Ethan never looked back. For the world, Ethan Cole remained the billionaire who had it all. But those who looked close enough knew the truth. Behind the empire, behind the wealth and power, stood a man who had given his wife everything, and lost the one thing money could never buy back: her faithfulness. And with that, the chapter of their love story closed forever. Love can build empires, but betrayal can burn them down. Ethan gave his wife everything, but in the end, trust was the one thing money couldn't buy back. What do you think? Should he have forgiven her, or was walking away the only choice? Let me know in the comments below.